I've been in this house for 11 months. I want to tell you what I've documented here. I want to lay it out carefully and honestly and let you decide what it means. I've always been good at documentation. I have notebooks and timestamps and moisture readings and camera footage and a legal pad with 2 columns, physical and other. Everything I've found has gone into one of them. Almost everything. The floor in the hallway moved last night. Not the boards, not a creak, not the kind of settling sound an old house makes when the temperature drops at night. The floor moved, a slow, shallow rise along the center seam, like something underneath it was breathing in and then breathing out. It held for 8 seconds, and then it lowered back down. I have it on camera. I have 11 months of it on camera. This is not the worst of it. I moved in because it was cheap. That's the whole reason. No family history here, no mystery connected to this address. I found the listing, paid the deposit, started sleeping here in early May. The price was low because the previous tenant left. I'd like to start there. The previous tenant didn't give notice. They called the property manager on a Tuesday and said they were done. They didn't ask to break the lease. They paid out the remaining 4 months in full and said they would not be returning for their belongings. Furniture, food in the refrigerator, clothes in the closet, everything. The property manager told me this during the viewing like it was a mildly amusing anecdote. Like people do this all the time, like walking away from everything you own with 4 months of rent as an exit fee is a thing that happens for ordinary reasons. I laughed at the right parts. I signed the lease 2 days later. The house was built in 1908, 2 stories, original 4-room structure, what they called a 4-square plan. Additions came later, a rear kitchen addition in the 1940s, a 2nd-story addition in the 1960s, a covered porch on the south side, date unknown. 3 different construction eras, 3 different ways of building, none of them fully compatible with each other. The result is a house that doesn't move as one thing when the weather changes. It moves as 3 separate things, each responding slightly differently to the same pressure. The hallway sits at the junction of all 3. There is a Douglas fir tree 12 feet from the northeast corner of the foundation. 60 feet tall. Canopy spreading 40 feet in every direction. Bark so thick and furrowed it looks like it has been accumulating itself for longer than the house has existed. It has. I spent 2 weeks in the crawl space before I understood what that meant. The northeast corner of the original structure has significant moisture damage in the subfloor. Years of it. The wood is darker than it should be. Softer. You press your thumb against it and feel it give in a way that intact wood doesn't give. And the tree has sent 2 roots through a gap between the foundation blocks. They enter the crawl space and extend 3 feet inside, curving slightly upward at their tips. From the right angle, in the headlamp beam, they look like 2 fingers reaching up from the ground. I photographed them, called the property manager. He said someone would come look. That was in June. No one came. I should have been alarmed, then I was. I'm not sure why I didn't. I'm not sure that's something I can explain cleanly either. I started keeping notes in May because I didn't know what else to do with what I was noticing. The hallway was cold, not drafty, not the kind of cold that moves, the kind that sits. You'd walk through the living room, perfectly warm, step into the hallway and feel it immediately, like stepping into a different building. I checked the windows, checked the door seals, pressed my hand against every wall. Nothing was coming in from outside. The cold was just there, settled, like it belonged there more than I did. May 19th, first entry. 6 to 8 degrees below adjacent rooms. No exterior wall, no structural reason. Will monitor. I bought an infrared thermometer, stood in the living room, 68 degrees. Took one step into the hallway, 61 degrees. Took one step back, 68 again. 7 degrees across a single threshold. I did it 4 times because I didn't believe the reading. I wrote it down, filed it, told myself old houses do strange things. The smell started in early June. It wasn't unpleasant exactly, just wrong for the context. Deep, earthy. The kind of smell that belongs underground, in a basement unopened in 20 years, in soil that hasn't seen light in longer than that. I'd smell it walking past the hallway doorway and stop, stand there, try to place it. June 14th. Smell persists on dry days. Not rain smell, older, like the inside of a root cellar. I told myself it was coming up from the crawl space, old earth, poor ventilation. There was a mechanical explanation and I wrote it down, and I believed it. What I didn't write down was that I started leaving the hallway light off. Not deliberately, I just stopped turning it on. I'd walk through in the dark and it felt, I don't have a better word for this, it felt more accurate somehow, like the light was the thing that didn't belong there. June 22nd, I found the crack. I almost missed it. I was crouching down to check the baseboard at the north end of the hallway, and the light caught it at an angle, a thin, dark line running along the seam between the 3rd and 4th floorboard from the east wall. I put my finger on it, ran it along the length. 14 inches. I went and found the photograph I'd taken on move-in day, May 3rd, the same section of floor, no crack. The seam was tight and clean and completely closed. In 7 weeks, the floor had opened 14 inches along that seam. I crouched there for a long time looking at it. Old wood, dry interior. Houses settle. That's what I told myself. I turned the hallway light off when I left. I installed the camera on June 28th. I positioned it in the upper corner of the hallway, angled down toward the floor, wide enough to capture the full length of the seam. I tested the night vision, checked the motion sensitivity, went to bed telling myself I'd have an explanation by morning. The next morning I opened the footage and skipped through it. Nothing. 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 Then 3:11 a.m. I stopped. The hallway was completely still, no movement anywhere in the frame, and then, along the seam, the floor rose. Not dramatically, not violently, slowly. A shallow ridge lifting along the crack, holding for 8 seconds, then lowering back down, like something underneath had taken a breath and let it out. I watched it again. Then again. I watched that 8 seconds of footage 11 times before I let myself say out loud what I was looking at. The floor was moving, on its own, at 3 a.m., with no one in the hallway, no wind, no footsteps, no cause I could see or hear. I had 2 explanations, and I worked through both of them methodically because that's what you do when something doesn't make sense. You don't let yourself feel it yet. You explain first. You feel it later, or you don't feel it at all if the explanation holds. First explanation: thermal expansion. A heat source below the floor cycling on at night, the wood above it expanding with the heat. I spent 2 hours under the house with a flashlight checking every pipe, every duct, every possible heat source beneath that section of hallway. Nothing. No ductwork, no pipes. Nothing that could produce localized heat beneath that seam. Second explanation: moisture. Wet wood swells. If something was introducing moisture into the subfloor from below, cycling in at night, receding by morning, the boards above it could flex along the seam. That one I could test. I bought a moisture meter and took readings from the hallway floorboards every morning for 3 weeks. Same time, same locations, same sequence. The numbers didn't track with the weather the way they should have. July 7th. No rain in 6 days. Outdoor humidity at 41%. The driest reading of the month. I crouched down in the hallway that morning expecting low numbers. The subfloor read 19% moisture, the highest reading in the entire sample. I checked it twice. It had rained on July 3rd and 4th. Those days the subfloor read 14 and 15%, lower than the dry day. The moisture was highest when the outside was driest. I sat on the hallway floor and looked at my notebook for a long time. Trees can reverse water flow through their root systems at night. It's documented. It's called hydraulic redistribution. When a tree is under drought stress, it pulls moisture from deep, wet soil and releases it through its surface roots into the drier ground around them. The Douglas fir outside the northeast corner is 60 feet tall. Its roots extend 40 feet in every direction. 2 of those roots were already inside the crawl space. On dry days, when the tree was under stress, it was releasing moisture through those roots, into the crawl space, into the subfloor above. The wood was swelling along the seam. The floor was flexing. The floor moved 8 times in 22 days. Same seam, same motion. Always between 2:30 and 4 in the morning. Always when the tree's canopy had stopped pulling and the root pressure had nowhere to go but outward. I had my explanation. I wrote it down, filed it under physical, closed the notebook, went back and watched the footage one more time. That should have been the end of the documentation. It wasn't. In July, I started waking up already standing in the hallway. Not walking there, not deciding to get up, just waking up. Already there, feet on the floor, the crack beneath me. The first time it happened, I thought I'd sleepwalked. I'd never sleepwalked before in my life. I went back to bed and told myself it was stress. The second time I woke up in the hallway, I noticed my phone was in my hand. The timer was running. 3 minutes. I had set it myself. I had no memory of setting it. Something in me was already following the routine, already going through the motions of the documentation. My body was doing the work while my mind was somewhere else entirely. The third time I checked the hallway camera in the morning. I was on it. 2:58 a.m. Walking from the bedroom doorway to the center of the hallway. Completely steady, not stumbling, not confused. Walking like someone who knew exactly where they were going. I stopped directly above the crack. I look down. I stand there for 11 minutes without moving. Then I walk back to the bedroom. I watched that footage 4 times before I could say what I was looking at. I was looking at myself, standing above the crack, in the dark, at 2:58 in the morning, with no memory of any of it. There is a documented sleep condition called parasomnia. The brain partially wakes, enough to move the body, enough to perform familiar routines, without engaging conscious memory. People cook meals, drive cars, carry out complex sequences of behavior, all while technically asleep. I had been standing in that hallway every day for 2 months. The routine was embedded. The body knew the way. The infrasound from the root system was waking my nervous system before my conscious mind engaged. The body was responding to the signal, going where it had learned to go. That's the explanation. The 4th time I woke up in the hallway, I was crouching, both hands flat on the floor, on either side of the crack. I don't know how long I'd been like that. The floor was cold. I set the timer, went back to bed, didn't look at the camera footage that morning. I still haven't looked at it. The 11th time I went into the crawl space, I almost didn't go. It was November 4th. Cold enough that the ground under the house was a different kind of cold than it had been in May. Heavier, wetter, the kind of cold that gets into your clothes and stays there. I'd been under the house 10 times by that point. I knew what I was going to find. I knew the layout by memory. I could close my eyes and trace the path from the hatch to the northeast corner without thinking about it. I went anyway. The crawl space is low enough that I have to move on my elbows. There's a section near the northeast corner where the clearance drops to about 14 inches, and I have to turn my head sideways to get through. I've done it enough times that I don't think about it anymore. I just go flat and move. In May, the roots were 3 feet inside the foundation. I'd measured them carefully, photographed them, written down the measurements, and filed them. In November, the longer root was 4 feet 9 inches inside the foundation. The shorter one was 4 feet 2. I lay on my back in the crawl space and held the measuring tape and did the math in my head. 4.5 inches of growth per month on the longer root. 2.5 inches of crack growth per month above me. The tip of the longer root was now 11 inches directly below the south end of the hallway crack. I stayed on my back for a while, just looking up at the underside of the subfloor above me. The wood was dark, soft in places. You could press your thumb into it and feel it give slightly in the worst sections. I'd been walking on that floor for 8 months, standing on it in my sleep, crouching on it with both hands flat against the seam. 11 inches between the root and the crack, growing toward each other from both directions. I rolled back onto my stomach to leave, and that's when I saw the tip. I'd been about to go. I was already moving toward the hatch. But something made me bring the headlamp back around to the root one more time and point it at the tip directly. It was wet. Not the crawl space floor around it, dry. Not the length of the root. Normal, slightly cool to the touch, the way roots feel. Just the tip, the last 2 inches. Wet in a way that was specific and deliberate, the way something is wet when liquid is actively moving through it rather than sitting on it. I put my finger against it, pulled it back, looked at the moisture on my fingertip in the headlamp beam. Hydraulic redistribution produces exactly this. The leading edge of a root transporting water outward is always its wettest point. The moisture was moving through the root toward the tip, toward the softest soil, toward the gap in the subfloor 11 inches above it. I know this explanation. I believed it lying there in the crawl space in November with moisture from the tip of a tree root on my fingertip. I believed it. I believed it. I put my hand flat on the crawl space floor and pushed myself toward the hatch and got out of there faster than I had any of the previous 10 times. I didn't look back at the root. I've thought about why I didn't look back. I don't have a good answer for that. I can explain most of it. That's what I've been telling you for the last hour. Every anomaly has a column. Every reading has a source. Every pattern has a mechanism behind it that a structural engineer or a botanist or a sleep specialist could look at and nod and say, yes, that tracks, that makes sense, that's documented. I believe all of it. And there are 3 things I cannot make fit anywhere. The first is the warmth. November 19th. I was standing above the crack during the longest floor event I'd recorded. 19 seconds of continuous flex along the seam. I was barefoot. I always went barefoot in the hallway by then. I told myself it was to feel the vibration more accurately, to detect any movement through the soles of my feet before the camera picked it up. For approximately 4 seconds, the floor felt warm beneath me. Not room temperature, not neutral. Warm. The specific warmth of something that has been holding heat for a long time and is releasing it slowly. The hallway is 7 degrees colder than every room adjacent to it. I have 8 months of thermometer readings that confirm this. The subfloor beneath that section of hallway runs consistently colder than the surrounding structure. For 4 seconds, my feet said otherwise. I have no sensor reading for those 4 seconds, only my own perception. I had been awake since just before 1 in the morning. I had been standing in that hallway for months at this point. My relationship to that space was not clean or neutral or objective. I'm not calling it data. I'm not explaining it either. The second thing is the previous tenant. I didn't think about them much in the early months. The property manager's story was strange, but strange things happen. People leave places suddenly. Leases get broken. Life intervenes. In October, I found a jacket in the back of the bedroom closet, pushed behind the hanging rail, dark green, heavy canvas. The kind of jacket you'd wear in a Pacific Northwest winter. The kind of jacket you would not leave behind voluntarily. I called the property manager and asked about the previous tenant, asked if there was a forwarding address, if they'd arranged to collect their belongings at some point. He said they'd been very clear. They were not coming back. They didn't want to be contacted. I asked how they'd seemed when they called to end the lease. He was quiet for a moment. He said fine. They seemed fine, just ready to move on. I asked if they'd given a reason for leaving. He said they mentioned the house felt different at night than it did during the day. He said it like it was nothing. Like that was a normal thing for a person to say. I put the jacket back in the closet. I closed the door. I haven't opened it since. The third thing is something I've had since September. I'll get to it. But I want you to sit with those first two for a moment before I do. The warmth that shouldn't have been there. The tenant who left their winter jacket in October. The house that felt different at night than it did during the day. I know what's in my physical column. I know what's not in my other column. The space between those two things is where I've been living for 8 months. I went outside to look at the tree properly for the first time in November. I'd seen it every day for 8 months. Through the window at the end of the hallway, through the kitchen glass in the morning, from the driveway when I came home. But I'd always been looking at it from inside the house, from the structure it was slowly working its way into. And I realized, standing at the back door, that I had never once gone and stood next to it. So I did. It's bigger than it looks from inside. That sounds obvious. Everything is bigger when you're standing next to it. But this was different. From the hallway window, the tree was a presence. Large, dark, always there. Standing at its base, it was something else entirely. The trunk was wider than my arm span. The bark was deeply furrowed, thick ridges running vertically, compressed and dense, like the tree had been accumulating itself for longer than I could properly imagine. I put my hand flat against it. It was cold. Of course it was cold. It was November. It was early morning. Everything was cold. But there was something else underneath the cold. A density. A stillness that wasn't the same as the stillness of stone or concrete. Something that felt less like an absence of movement and more like movement happening too slowly to detect. I stood there with my hand on the bark for a long time. This tree is between 80 and 100 years old based on the trunk diameter. It was here before the house. It was here before the road. It was here before anyone decided this particular patch of Pacific Northwest ground was a place to build something permanent. It will be here after the house is gone. The property manager confirmed it's city property, 1 foot past the property line. The city doesn't remove trees without evidence of immediate hazard. 2 roots in a crawl space don't constitute immediate hazard. The tree stays. The tree has always stayed. I looked down at the surface roots radiating out from the base. They spread in every direction, some of them as thick as my wrist, running just below the surface of the soil, visible where the ground has shifted above them. I followed one of them with my eyes from the base of the trunk outward across the ground until it disappeared under the northeast corner of the house. In through the foundation, into the crawl space, toward the subfloor, toward the crack. I thought about everything I'd documented, 8 months of readings and timestamps and footage and notebook entries, the cold and the smell and the sound and the movement and the sleepwalking and the crack growing 2.5 inches every month toward something growing 4.5 inches every month toward it. All of it pointing at this tree. All of it explainable by this tree. And standing there with my hand on the bark in the November cold, I realized that explained and understood are not the same thing. I know the mechanism, I know the biology, I know what hydraulic redistribution is, and what infrasound does to a nervous system, and what parasomnia looks like on a camera at 2:58 in the morning. I know all of it. I just don't know what it's for. I took my hand off the bark and went back inside. The hallway was cold. It's always cold. I want to tell you about something I found in September and didn't include in the chronology until now. Not because I forgot it, because I didn't know how to place it. I've been sitting with it for 3 months trying to find the right column for it, and I still haven't found one. In September, I went back through the full camera archive, every night from May through August, every hour. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed anything before the event started accelerating. In July, there is a clip from 3:03 a.m. that I hadn't flagged the first time through. No floor event that night. The hallway is completely still. By every measure, it's an unremarkable clip, the kind you skip past when you're looking for movement. But the image does something. Over 37 seconds, the hallway goes darker. Not the whole frame, just a portion of it. The area directly above the crack. The edges of the image stay exactly the same. The rest of the hallway stays exactly the same. Just that section, darkening slowly over 37 seconds, and then returning to normal. I watched it 6 times before I sent it to anyone. I sent it to a camera technician, someone who works with this equipment professionally. I told him nothing about the house or the events or any of it, just sent him the clip and asked what he thought. He said, localized temperature drop in front of the lens. Cold air affects contrast perception. Probably the cold. Probably the cold. I wrote that down. I looked at it for a long time. Probably the cold. The floor event that night happened at 3:11 a.m. The contrast shift was at 3:03 a.m., 8 minutes before. I wake up on average 12 minutes before the floor events. The camera registered something 8 minutes before the same event. 2 separate detection systems, one biological, one mechanical, both picking up something before the visible event begins. The camera technician said probably the cold. I wrote it in the physical column. I wrote it there because that's where it goes if you accept probably the cold as a sufficient answer. I'm not sure I accept it. I'm not sure I don't. There is one more thing about that clip. When I zoomed into the north edge of the darkened area, the edge closest to the wall, closest to the tree, there is a texture in the floor grain that isn't present in any other footage from that camera. Small, rectangular, a repeating pattern that appears during the 37 seconds and is gone when the contrast returns to normal. I've looked at it for 3 months. I've shown it to 2 people. One said compression artifact, the camera's sensor struggling with the low light contrast shift and producing a visual error in the grain. The other one said nothing, just looked at it for a while and handed the phone back. I didn't ask what they thought. I think I already knew. I found that same pattern in 3 other clips, not contrast shift clips. Ordinary nights, nothing happening, no floor events, the hallway completely still. Always in the same location in the frame. Always above the crack. Always between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Always gone by morning. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to tell you what I think it is. But I'll tell you this. The other column is still empty. I've been staring at it for 3 months. I still can't make myself write anything in it. I think that says more than anything I've documented. I'm still in the house. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters. 8 months of documentation, the crack growing, the root growing, the sleepwalking, the camera footage I still haven't watched, the jacket in the closet I haven't opened since October, the other column I haven't been able to write anything in. And I'm still here. I've thought about why a lot. The practical answer is the lease. Breaking it costs money I don't have. The property manager knows about the roots now, knows about the crack, and has done nothing. Legally, I'm in a complicated position. Practically, I'm in a house I can document but can't easily leave. That's the practical answer. The honest answer is harder. I don't think I want to leave. I've tried to examine that honestly, and I can't fully account for it. I moved in because it was cheap. I had no connection to this house, no history here, no reason to be attached to it. 8 months ago, I would have left the moment something felt wrong. Something feels wrong. I'm still here. The crack is 29 inches long. The root tip is 11 inches below it. They are growing toward each other at different rates from different directions, and at some point, I've done the math, I know roughly when, they will meet. I don't know what happens when they meet. I've tried to model it structurally, the root reaching the gap in the subfloor, the moisture it carries, the pressure it would exert against the boards above it. The engineer would have an answer. A botanist would have an answer. I have a notebook full of answers. None of them feel like enough anymore. I set the timer when I go to the hallway. 3 minutes. Hallway. Leave it bell. I mostly obey it. I've been going back to one frame from September for 3 months. One frame from that July clip. The north edge of the darkened area, the pattern in the grain that appears for 37 seconds and disappears before morning. I want to know if you see what I see. I want to know if it looks the same to you as it does to me. I want to know if I'm the only one who can't look at it and say compression artifact and mean it. It's in the footage. It's been there since September. The hallway is cold tonight. It's always cold. The floor hasn't moved yet. It's only 11:30.